Welcome, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Data-Driven Answers to Achieve Omnichannel Success, presented by Redpoint Global and Martech. Before we begin, if you have any audio issues, click the audio icon on your screen to enable your audio. If you have any viewing issues, you can use the Q&A section at any time to communicate with us. You can also send questions directly to the speakers about their presentation at any time. Joining us today from Redpoint Global are Steve Zisk, Senior Product Marketing Manager, and Aref Nohrudi, Principal Solution Consultant. Welcome to you both. I'll turn things over to you now.
Thank you so much. I'd like to start us off by taking a look at what the difference is between an ordinary and a great customer experience. Then we'll look a little bit at what gets in the way of that and at how Omnichannel has been evolving over time. And finally, we'll take some time to look at example customer journeys with Aref being our primary guide on that and how those operate across channels. Many studies of consumer preferences, both in buying goods and services and interacting with all kinds of brands, show that consumers want to control their own buying journeys. And you can see that in some of the statistics I put up on the screen. They want to be able to use the touch points that make sense for what they're trying to accomplish. And most companies try to accommodate that and sort of be responsive on those channels during sales, service, exploration, advertising, and so on. These complex multi-channel, multi-touch journeys are evidenced by the proliferation of channels as well as the number of different touch points along the way. But by default or by design, each of those channels is siloed, with the marketing stack providing a megaphone, if you will, for reaching customers, but without necessarily having a lot of coordination of what the message looks like. So as a consumer interacts with the brand, they may not be getting what they're looking for, and the brand is missing an opportunity to speak in one voice. And that leads to missed connections, mistrust on the part of the consumer, and frankly, bad outcomes. If instead a brand can build an understanding of the customer that transcends those channel boundaries, picks a next best action that's tuned to specifically what the customer is trying to do and meets the customer with a consistent message, then the customer experience will dramatically improve. And you'll see that because the outcome will be harmonious. You'll have good sales, high net promoter scores, and so on. For both the consumer and the brand, this is kind of the nirvana that we're aiming for. But we have to recognize that that a lot of these experiences make a real difference, and that there's a huge disconnect between the brands that are doing this kind of thing really well and the ones that are not. And that's true not just for the obvious case of somebody who wants to actually come and buy something or buy a service, but it also matches the kinds of experiences that consumers are having with more ordinary and prosaic kinds of things. So an interaction with a doctor or an interaction with a pharmacist at your local pharmacy are part of a healthcare consumer journey. Similarly, a traveler having an interaction while they're on a journey or while they're at a hotel or a resort or a spa. A consumer trying to interact with a bank to get a new loan or to buy a house or to do something else. These are all the kinds of journeys that customers really are looking for understanding, relevance, personal experience, and they want the brands to remove friction from all kinds of journeys and interactions. Starting with fundamental forces that can interfere with that omnichannel experience, we need to recognize that the journey itself can contribute to the complexity of what's going on with trying to meet customers with relevant experiences. We as marketers need to be understanding a customer-centric view of the journey, moving away from thinking about the brand first or the product first into understanding what choices the customer might be making and meeting them based on those kinds of choices with relevant content, offers, actions that align with their goals rather than just a continuing drone of buy this new product, take up this new service, come to my store next week. And it's not just the technology that needs to change, but we have to recognize that our brands, our people, our processes, the incentives that we put together to try to get our employees to do their job, the way that we measure them, all need to be transformed. And that has to happen in an environment that's changing drastically, that's unique to our industry, and that's inflected by our company's specific goals and capabilities. And if you throw in the changes of a competitive environment, supply chain disruptions, changing weather or climate factors or other kinds of things going on, and of course, evolving customer expectations, you have a formula for disruption. But disruption doesn't have to be a terrible thing. And we'll take a few slides to understand what kinds of things disruption can change. Let's start by taking a look at, I'm sure we've all seen Scott Brinker's MarTech 5,000, now 8,000. We need to remember that the enumeration of MarTech has passed 8,000, but each brand may have its own chosen few elements within this set of slides. We're not all actually looking at 8,000 different channels. We're looking at how do we make the channels that we've chosen, the touch points that we've activated and that our teams are using for everyday journeys. How do we make those channels count in customer interactions? So if we narrow that down and take a look at the kinds of journeys that customers are on, we recognize that these can include things like the obvious digital channels like email, mobile, web, e-commerce, but they also include slightly more esoteric channels like different kinds of loyalty apps or loyalty interactions, analytics that we might be doing to understand the journey better and to improve customer experience, CRM, particularly CRM, not just in selling, but in things like service journeys, trying to return a product, especially given how much of our journeys tend to be digital, can be a very difficult process, or it can be a very easy process, depending on what the brand has done to make it difficult and easy. And of course, those channels that consumers use go beyond the pure digital channels to include things like face-to-face experiences in a store or in a branch or in that doctor's office that I talked about earlier. And from the consumer's point of view, what they're looking for is a unified, connected kind of journey where something that I do or say in one channel is immediately reflected in other channels. I'm sure we've all had the experience of getting into IVR hell where we call a CRM or an office, fill out a bunch of information, answer a few questions, and then when we finally get connected with an actual person, what's the first thing that they do? They ask us again for all of the information that we just entered into their IVR. Wouldn't it be a much better experience if somebody simply picked up the line, said, "Oh, Mr. Zisk, I see that you recently purchased XYZ and you were on our website in the returns area trying to set up a return. Can I help you with that?" This kind of a journey where somebody meets me with my expectations based on my history and based on an up-to-date understanding of what I'm doing becomes an outstanding customer journey. So I'm trying to advance here. So if we look at how that is happening in MarTech today and in the various ways that people are trying to set up for these multi-touch, multi-point journeys, we see an evolution, a change from a channel level based interaction with the customer where the audiences are managed in the channel. There's a team that operates in that specific channel. My email team has one set of offers, one set of content, one set of information. My web team has a different set. in those kinds of situations, there's no central brain. You can't necessarily react in real time, and you can't carry over information. And trying to carry over information by swiveling on your chair from one channel to another is ineffective and not scalable. The rise of the CDP, the customer data platform, was a response to this problem where audiences get gathered together, managed in a single location, and treated as segments that can then be treated within the channels. This brings in the central brain, allows you to do certain kinds of real-time interactions, but is highly resource intensive and often doesn't fix the individual channel silo problem. Instead, moving to a complete omnichannel experience platform, an OCX platform, allows individuals to be met with offers, actions, and activities that meet their needs using centralized audiences that are managed and updated in real time with centralized content and information that allows for designing that omnichannel experience. In order to do this, we really have to have a series of capabilities inside that omnichannel platform that range from connecting the data, understanding the information that you're getting in, and I'll take a little side trip into data integration and data quality in a minute here. Building up a customer 360 or a golden record, being able to identify what the actions are that I want to take and orchestrate those actions across all of the different channels that the customers use, but then critically being able to deliver a marketing moment, recognize what the customer's actual reaction was, that measure it, optimize it, push the information back, and repeat the cycle so that we're in a constantly improving virtuous cycle, if you will, of understanding who the customer is. In order to do that, we have to both be able to understand who the customer is in detail, processing new information, changing our understanding of the customer as they do their journey. Oh, now they're looking at this particular product on the website. Let's see if we can figure out what kind of a change that represents. Because, again, I'm sure we've all had the experience of researching a product, deciding what we're going to buy, buying the product, and then discovering that we get hounded for the next week across the internet by advertisements to buy that same product that we already bought. So being able to update the information about who we are, what we're doing, what our interests are in real time becomes very important in that context. And decisions have to get driven by that, and so does the experience itself. I promised you a little side note here. One thing to understand is that in almost any of these environments, you need to be able to integrate data above and beyond simply the kinds of data that you get inside the channels. So within our enterprise silos, whether that's a CRM, point of sale systems, ERPs, and other kinds of supply chain systems, are all the customer signals and all of the other signals that we care about that we need to be able to bring together in order to orchestrate the right kind of decision. Especially with the kind of supply chain disruption that we've seen over the past couple of years, this goes way beyond simply collecting customer information in order to look for outcomes. Similarly, data quality becomes a very important context for understanding who the customer is, because if we make a mistake here and mistake one person for another, or think that two different people are the same person, we're going to get bad outcomes. I want to move this now over into the out of the abstract realm and into the more practical realm, and start taking a look at what some actual real customer experiences might look like. So in order to do that, I'd like to turn this over to my colleague, Aref. He'll talk a little bit, and I'll keep chiming in with a few questions and comments as we go. Aref, take it away.
Thank you, Steve. That was a great overview. We're going to dive a little deeper into the successful omnichannel personalization. We're going to look at, we're going to start with what does it require from an organization to make all this happen. And what we found are some key findings in terms of a shift, and you can see that represented in the left column, in the from column to the to column. And they're similar kind of concepts, but we wanted to give you some idea in terms of how can organizations change to enable better personalization in the omni-channel world that we live in now. So the idea is to complement what you're doing already. A lot of marketers are already leveraging segmentation, for example, segmenting customers that have already purchased, or another segment is loyal customers. These are all traditional types of segments which still apply in the real world, but we want to encourage a shift to thinking about more individual engagements and thinking of segments of one rather than a broad segment. We want to get down into more detail, and we'll look into techniques and how to leverage information to do better personalization. So the idea is we're moving away from broad segments to individual engagement. We're moving from a linear experience, such as a campaign that's just promoting a specific item or based on seasonality. We're looking at more multi-event, multi-stage, and multi-channel engagements. So again, moving away from a static campaign to something that's highly personalized for something that fits in the moment. So taking into account context and cadence is important. Again, moving away from batch and episodic marketing to real-time and event-driven marketing. From more of a transactional approach to something that's representing more of a customer life cycle. And then finally, again, harping on the channel-centric idea, moving away from that into something more optimized for a omni-channel and real-time type of engagement. And we'll take a look at some examples here in terms of what that looks like. But before we do that, we're going to look at the experience of a customer, specifically moving through the channels. And keep in mind that personalization requires information and data. Now, oftentimes, as a best practice, when an anonymous visitor appears, for example, on your website, there are some best practices we can apply without knowing who that user is. For example, there is some information that can be made available, such as the referring site that sent us this visitor, or the geolocation of the user that's on your website. So again, there are some best practices I'll take us through. So when we have a situation where we don't know who the visitor is, for example, on the website, there are best practices we can apply, including ABN testing. ABN testing is a proven method of optimizing without really knowing much information about the user. It can certainly help leveraging personalization information to do ABN testing, but it's not necessary. Then we're going to take a look at, in this use case here, how we can leverage in-flight or in-session signals. For example, someone browsing on the website, interested in a specific category, such as skiing or hiking. That information, as the visitor clicks through the site, can be used and allows us to then understand what the customer or the anonymous visitor is looking for, and we can apply that to the personalization, as we'll see in a moment here. Then we'll step into, once someone identifies themselves, again, we'll use the example of a website, one of the power channels, and we'll see that once someone authenticates by either creating an account or signing up to the newsletter or signing into their account, we're able, at that point, once a user identifies themselves, we're able to use all of the underlying information about that user to personalize the experience. And we'll see that applied in not just the web channel in this example, but we'll see that applied in the email as well as the the SMS as well as the call center channels in these examples that I'll share next. Before we take a look at the use case, I want to say that the foundation, again, of personalization is data. And with the underlying data, we're able to build rules. And the rules are really a key foundation of allowing us to personalize the experience in various channels in this omni-channel world we live in. And so we utilize, as marketers in this new world, we use rules to determine what's the appropriate content to surface. And we'll see some examples here in a moment. But some of the rules include, for example, the specific daytime, so the temporal information that we can leverage to determine what offers do we present. Another example of a rule can be based on geolocation. Again, we can, for example, on the website, leverage a user's browser's geo information and leverage that information to then personalize the experience based on that. Also, I mentioned this, capturing web events such as navigation on the website is oftentimes used to personalize the experience. So again, if I navigate over to the hiking section, well, then I identified an interest in hiking today. So we can use that signal to personalize further offers on the website in other channels. And once someone is authenticated, we can leverage the whole suite of information about that user to then personalize the experience. So whether that's loyalty information or transactional information like purchases, or in the healthcare world, it could be an office visit or a vaccination, for example. And then finally, last but not least, rules that leverage automated machine learning are becoming more and more popular as marketers are able to lean on automation mechanisms such as machine learning to develop approaches to deliver the most personalized experiences using machine learning.
Can you show us an example of that? Not necessarily the machine learning, but an example of how those rules might play out, Aref, on a particular website or other environment?
Yeah, one of the most popular machine learning approaches is, for example, to develop a next best product or next best offer mechanism that presents the best next offer or item or category to present. So that would be an example of machine learning. Okay.
Thanks.
Next, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the experience on how an experience on the website can unfold. And in order to apply these approaches in terms of personalization, one of the best practices to configure regions in the spaces where you're communicating. So, for example, on the website, which we're looking at an example here of a retail website for sporting goods, you can see there are regions dedicated to the personalization. So we can see, for example, in the lower left-hand side, a rule checks for the specific date or the time of day and presents an offer based on temporal information. On the lower right-hand side, we see an example of personalization driven by the user's geolocation. Again, that's coming from the user's browser, and we can leverage that geo data to personalize a message based on that person's area where they live, or based on drive distance to, for example, a store. Then in the center, we can see there's the hero image on the right-hand side, as well as the carousel on the left-hand side. That area in this use case is personalized based on the user's interest or affinity. So as they navigate around on the website, we can leverage those signals of interest or intent to personalize the hero image in the center, as well as on the left-hand side. And then finally, in this example, we have a region on the top, which is a pop-out banner, which leverages the underlying CDP data. And what we're identifying in this example is the user a loyalty member? And so we can surface a loyalty-related offer. So the idea is the entire site, in this case, the home page, is configured so that we can leverage all of the different approaches, in this case, 4 different approaches in terms of personalization. Okay. Next, we're going to go ahead and take a look at that experience. So if I'm, for example, an anonymous visitor on this Wellesley Outfitter site, we can drive an ABN test as we don't have any signals, we don't have the CDP data, but as a best practice, we can leverage A/B testing, which is very powerful, and I'll show some further examples in the email channel later on as well. So if I'm anonymous to the site, an A/B test can try to hone in on what I may be interested in, so we can see the different versions of the A/B test appear here. And once I, for example, navigate to, say, the camp and hike section of the website, that signal is received by us, and in real time, we can then modify and enhance the experience by, for example, personalizing based on that affinity to the hiking area. So we can see the boots and the camping stool, as well as the item on the right-hand side, which is all camp and hike related. Again, leveraging the in-session behavior to personalize the experience. Now, once I authenticate and log in, this opens up a lot more data to be used and leveraged in the session. So, for example, here in this use case, we're surfacing a loyalty program pop-up. So, for example, as I log in, we determined that I'm not a loyalty member yet, and based on that, we can surface an offer to become a loyalty member, as well as also ask the user to specify an interest area. So once I go ahead and configure this as a user, for example, I select cycle and camp and hike as my areas of interest, and I sign up. Now we're able to leverage that information in real time and pop up, for example, a couple of offers based on the categories that I've opted into. Okay.
Aref, would it be
Yes.
possible in those kinds of circumstances to also do things like put a pop-up question or questionnaire about interests or other kinds of things in front of the customer, even without their having logged in?
Absolutely. Those are all great techniques in helping to drive that experience and collecting information about the user. Absolutely. Good question. Now, in terms of the next area we're going to focus on is the email channel. Now, in the email channel, marketers have been conducting ABN testing for a long time. What we see here in this area, in this example, are the typical A/B testing approach in email, which is around setting up a test, configuring a percentage of the audience to be a holdout, sending out the test, determining the winner, and then switching the holdout group to the winning content. That's a traditional ABN test approach, which is a very solid approach. However, because of the lag time of, for example, the email channel, marketers have gotten themselves in trouble with email because the content is mostly static from the time that it's sent. In other words, if I set up a test and send it out on a Monday, it's likely that not every recipient of the email is going to open up that email on Monday. They may wait until Wednesday or Friday, at which point a lot of things could have happened, like a purchase or an affinity to a different product. So the traditional A/B test approach can be complemented with the modern approach of real-time and open-time A/B testing, which allows us to alter and change the content inside of the email, specifically images. We were able to optimize those, the offers and images at open time. And what that does is it removes that lag time as we're able to leverage information up to the second to then drive personalization into the email channel. And so let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. So in this example here, I have an email that I'm opening prior to having gone to the website. So in this case, we're driving an A/B test inside of the email at open time. And so we can see the different versions. So every time that I open the email, the content changes as the A/B test is delivered in real time. Now, if I go ahead and before I open the email, if I go ahead and go to the website in this use case, and so let's say I navigate to the camp and hike section before I open the email. What happens is when I then open the email, after I, for example, look at the Mola headlamps here on the website, what happens is once I open the email, after the website visit, the email content can be aligned with what I saw or what I navigated and what I was interested in on the website. So this is an example of open time personalization that allows me to not only present fresh content at open time, but it allows me to leverage signals up until the last second before the user actually opens the email, and allows me to tailor the content of the email based on all of the information that we know about the user. Okay.
And I would just note there that that might allow you to tailor the content to a different sale or a different preference area, but it also might, as we can see from this kind of a picture, you might be doing something aspirational. If you've just bought a pack, maybe the next best action is to show you that picture of a hiker making it up to the top of a mountain, rather than trying to sell you the pack or sell you another pair of shoes or whatever it is. Show that you understand who the customer is, what their ideas and aspirations are, not just what their purchasing journey is.
Yes, well said, Steve. Thank you. Now, finally, then we can close the loop in other channels, such as, for example, leveraging the content affinity in the website. Instead of sending email, we can also send other types of messages, including, for example, an SMS message based on the prior web visit. Now, another channel that's often overlooked is the call center. And so in this example here, we have a screen that allows a call center agent to leverage the underlying information about the customer or the patient. So in this case, we can see all of the information related and aggregated for Michelle, including, for example, next best offers and product recommendations. So this is to your point, Steve, in terms of how to use automated machine learning. So here we can see there's product recommendations that are delivered and surfaced for Michelle specifically. Now, if we look at some other examples, looking at hospitality, all of these concepts in terms of personalizations apply across industries. So here in this case, we're looking at a hospitality example where we know all of the information about someone's stay or their interest in certain destinations. And again, that can be leveraged to then promote specific recommendations. And so here we have an example in the finance vertical. Again, the same concepts apply, as well as also in the healthcare. So if we take a closer look at in terms of the healthcare industry, there are some definite opportunities for personalization. And we're going to take a closer look at a use case in the healthcare industry. And this is a use case for a patient welcome campaign. So what you're seeing here is a summary of the planning that goes into the creation of a welcome campaign in the healthcare industry. We can see, for example, the target is a new to the roster patient without a visit or a scheduled visit. We're showing the markets that this applies to, the goals and KPIs. So this allows the marketers to really focus on what's important for this campaign, including all of the triggers that allow us to send messages at certain key points in the patient's journey. So the idea is that we're leveraging information, and we're tailoring messages specific to each individual. And we'll see an example of that here in a moment as well. But this is, for example, where we see the various touch points from the welcome message to the annual wellness checkup, to the patient app recommendation, to the screening, to the saving. These are all messages as part of the journey that that we want the patient to experience. And on the bottom, we can see the various channels that those messages will appear in.
And I would just point out that if you look at that suppression rules list again, there's a number of elements there that clearly go beyond just pulling information back from our channel information to things like connectivity with the EMR and connectivity with different kinds of patient rosters and schedules and other kinds of information. So the point of all of this is that OCX is way beyond just marketing channels.
Correct. Now, in terms of enabling an experience such as the welcome campaign here, the welcome engagement series, here are some components that marketers would configure to enable that welcome experience. And those components are the actual design of the triggers. You can see that with the green dots, green, white, and green dots. Those are individual triggers representative of the personalized journey, which is supported by an audience, which is also supported by rules. And we touched on rules earlier. So we see an example of the rules that qualify each one of these triggers, as well as the digital content and actual offers are represented here. The offers in this case are, for example, emails, and those offers are highly personalized. So the idea is to leverage, again, the underlying information, set up triggers, but then have templates that respond to personalization. And what that looks like is represented here on the last slide here. So I'll finish up with this slide. And this is a representation of a highly personalized email message. So each region, there's various regions inside of these emails. Each region is personalized, just like we saw earlier in the example of the retail website, which had regions that were personalized. In this case, the email has various regions that are personalized and can represent, for example, a call to action with a specific phone number based on someone's geolocation, as an example. So all of this, again, all of this work feeds to driving very highly tailored and highly engaging messages across channels. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand the presentation back to Cynthia.
Thank you, Aref. Thanks, Steve. We've got quite a few questions in here, so I will go ahead and ask the first one. So as you talk about real time, there seems to be a lot of complexity to do things in real time, such as data matching and integration. So why do marketers need real-time data?
I'll take first stab at it, and then Steve, you can back me up or fill in the blanks. So the first idea is to really unify the experience of the user. So we're trying at the highest level, we're trying to drive engagement and loyalty, and oftentimes what that translates into is leveraging information to deliver more personalized messages. The idea is customers and patients, they're looking to be understood. They don't want to provide information over and over without any benefits. So the idea is, in order to why do we need real-time information is to better in order to leverage that information to drive better experiences.
Yeah. That's a great answer, Aref. The only, I'm going to make two sort of extensions to that. One is that most of the real-time complexity, if you will, can be and should be ultimately hidden from the marketer. So making a real-time engine that knows how to keep up with the customer, making the real-time connections into the channels and into other arenas is something that doesn't have to be done by the marketer on an ongoing basis. There are certain complexities that the marketer is going to have to take on in order to be real time, but they're really the same complexities the marketer has to take on in order to be relevant. And you, Aref, showed a few of those. That wonderful image in the last slide of all of the different ways that personalization could happen for the patient wellness campaign. In order to do that, the marketer has to be prepared to create messaging and variants of messaging and content and information that really represents all of the different aspirations of all of the different consumers that the marketer is trying to reach. That's the sort of one fundamental complexity that can't simply be wished away or pushed away in doing real-time marketing. But the second point that I would make is measurable results. There are just a ton of surveys and studies, including some that have just sort of come out and been talked about in the last few weeks, that show how much of a difference it can make in customer experience, in customer loyalty that you were talking about a minute ago, if you can make the journeys and experience relevant and up to the moment in real time.
All right, great. Thank you both. Our next question, what impact do you see on omnichannel customer experience as third-party cookies go away?
I'll take a first crack at it, and Steve, I know you have more information about it, but third-party cookies, have their time and place. I would argue, and really what we like to support is first-party information.
Yes.
So what we're really encouraging is leveraging first-party data, which doesn't fall under the constraints of third-party cookies.
Yeah,
Steve?
and that's a great sort of segue to the obvious follow-on question of how do you do that? How are you going to get that first-party data? And the short answer that I like to give is remember that your customers are in a relationship with you. Treat it as a relationship, treat it as a value exchange. Again, surveys and lots of other information has come along that says, I, the consumer, am willing to give you, the brand, my information, but I'm going to do that in exchange for a better experience. If I give you my information, I'm relying on you not misusing it, taking good care of it, being a steward of it, and using it to improve my customer experience. And if you show me that you do that, you show me that you're a trustworthy brand and able to keep up with my goals and my experience, I will continue to share my data with you. And that kind of a value exchange is what brands should be aiming for, pushing for. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Get people to sign up, get people to answer even simple 1-question or 2-question surveys. Just show them that you understand who they are and that you will be responsive to their expectations and desires.
Thanks, Steve. And that's sort of in line with our next question, something that we've seen a lot. How do you deliver personalization without compromising privacy?
Steve, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so there's a few things to understand about that. The first is to be transparent. So if I'm going to deliver personalization, that means that I need to be using your information in order to deliver that experience. So I should be transparently telling you, here's the information that I'm going to collect. Here's what I'm going to do with it. Here's how I'm going to use it. Here's how I'm going to take care that it isn't misused. So that's sort of rule number one, is be transparent about what you're doing and how you're going to do it. Rule number two is give the user the options and the choices, and don't make it one of these little opt out for a lousy experience kind of a checkbox. Tell the users what it is that you want, give them some options, allow them to control all of the characteristics that they care about. What channels would you like to be interacted with? How often do you want me to talk to you? What kinds of things are you interested in? What kinds of information can I keep and share with you? And then third, and I would put this sort of far behind the other two that we just talked about, be compliant. The number of different places in the world that have privacy regulations today is only going up. And the best way to handle that is to really understand who your customer is, where your customer is, what regulations apply to them, and be proactive about how you're going to interact with your customer and how your brand is going to be a good steward of customer information. And that is not just about technology. It's about changing the technology that you use to maintain and have privacy, and the people and processes within your organization need to be educated and need to understand what they are and are not allowed to do with customer information.
Great. Thanks so much, Steve. Our next question from Vikrant, is a CDP a must-have for this level of personalization?
My short answer to that is, in a sense, yes. Depends on what you mean by a CDP. A CDP may actually not be enough. If you get a classic CDP that is doing everything up to the creation of segments and then pushing those segments out into the channel, you're going to get one level of personalization. But you may actually need to go beyond what a CDP offers you in order to get the real-time experience that Aref was showing you and talking about across multiple channels.
Okay. Looks like we've got one more question here. What would you say is the first step for an organization to take to improve the overall customer experience?
Sure, I'll take a stab at it, and Steve, go ahead and fill in the blanks. But this is a common question we get. It's a really valuable question, and typically we respond with we encourage a crawl, walk, run approach, and then specifically, I would, based on my experience, I would. The idea is you want to get buy-in within your organization. So I would, as a marketer, pick an easy win type of campaign. For example, a multi-channel welcome experience. For example, like the one we saw in the healthcare area, may not have to be as complex or sophisticated. It could just be, 2 or 3 waves of a welcome message, where the first message greets the user, the second message, to Steve's point, may ask a question that's relevant and tries to collect some information about the user. And then the third wave can leverage the actual information provided to then deliver an offer. But the idea is that be mindful to start with something easy, and also make sure that you measure these interactions, specifically as it relates to your goals. So the where you want to start is something easy. Get the buy-in of your organization, measure the effectiveness, so that you can then, after the campaign or the journey, you can deliver those results to the team and get more buy-in to perform further personalization and add additional journeys. So that's another approach in terms of where to start, is to start with your loyal customers. So pick out a slice of your loyal customers that could be based on recency, it could be based on frequencies or RFM. Leverage a small sample group, deliver an experience, measure that experience, and then share the findings with your team so that you can get buy-in.
Yeah, that's a great answer, Aref. The only other thing that I would add to that is be prepared to be agile. And that sort of has 2 aspects. You want to make sure that your people, your teams, and your software can move at the speed that you want to move, because you're going to want to be able to follow up those early experiences that Aref is talking about with additional campaigns and experiences. And the other side of being agile is be prepared to be experimental. I mean, Aref talked it several times about ABN testing. That's one kind of experiment, but there's loads of different ways of experimenting and thinking about how to reach the customer. And just as Aref said, if you put measurements in place, then you can use those experiments to very quickly understand what's working for the customers, what's working for my organization, how much of a return am I getting from these different things, and use those experiments as gaining experience so that your organization can learn from failures and follow up on successes and build out that omnichannel experience.
Excellent. Thank you both so much. I just want to remind our audience before we conclude that there are a few handouts in our handout section. So go ahead and download those before we conclude. Thanks again to Steve and Aref for this engaging presentation or insightful content for us. If we didn't get to your question, we will be sure to pass it along to Redpoint. On behalf of Martech, I want to thank everyone in our audience for attending this webinar, and we hope you join us again soon. Thanks so much.